Hey everyone, welcome to Alumless. It's great to have you back. I am Ryan Catherwood. That gentleman on the other side of the screen, as you well know, is Chris Marshall. He is the founder, the CEO, the leader extraordinaire of CMAC, Chris Marshall Advancement
I
Consulting.
love how you build it up like I'm some legend or something.
You're
Thank
the
you for
man, the
your
myth, the
time.
legend, right? This is what we're doing here. We're pumping up CMAC, right? We're glad that you're joining us though for the pumping up of Chris Marshall, spending Friday with us. Glad to have you. We have a great show for you today. We are not broadcasting live today, however. As you listen to this, I will be somewhere along the I-95 corridor in spring break traffic hell, most likely, taking the family from Virginia down to Orlando for a Disney vacation, which I'm a little apprehensive about. I am told that the Magic Kingdom is sold out during this trip, which is hard to fathom. I didn't realize that was even possible. So it's definitely the busiest week of the year at Disney when it's already an extraordinarily busy place. So, Chris, I hope you'll be having me in your prayers
I already prayed for you right there.
as we attempt to lean into this trip. My kids and my wife never been to Disney before. I went like 25 years ago as a teenager, so I kind of forget what it's all about. But I'm
Remind the
sure.
audience, Ryan, how old your kids are.
Yeah, my kids are 11, 8, and 3. So it's going to be a little bit challenging. We got 2 kids who can kind of do everything, and then 1 kid who can kind of do just the little kid rides. So I don't know. We're going to make do and try to have a good time. And, that's what it's all about. But
Make sure you take your son or all the older kids on Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a pretty wild roller coaster, though. It may not be for you.
I've
And
heard
then, and then the Avatar ride, which is like a simulator virtual reality thing.
those are 2 of like across the 4 Disney parks are known. I think of the 2 that my sister who loves Disney. So you got to hit those 2, right? If you're not going to do any of the others, you got to hit those 2, which I'm going to do my best to do. But we're going to have, I'm sure Dan Olds, our guest today, and Chris are going to be commenting in the stream as I am driving down 95 to say hello to everyone who's tuning in this week. Dan Olds is Vice President for Alumni Relations and Information Systems at Bowdoin College. And if you have any questions for Dan, Chris, or myself, I probably won't be answering them at this moment in time, but Dan and Chris hopefully will. And of course, please download the podcast for the 30-minute bonus section with Dan, which we love to invite people to check out each and every edition of Alumless. All right, Chris. Well, since we met last time for Alumless, we officially progressed into springtime. It's now April, and we are fast approaching the end of another academic year with really only another 4 weeks to go till exams. Looking back over the last year, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the projects involving volunteer engagement that you've been working on that have been really memorable to you?
Yeah, for those that are listening live to this first part, it's not April yet. It's March 31st. Ryan's jumping ahead to avoid thinking about his drive to Orlando.
That's
It's
true.
March, but we're almost at April. April 1st, April Fool's Day. We should talk about the best April Fool's joke we pulled on anyone. So this is I don't have a specific one, but there's a general sense that I'm seeing with multiple clients where they bring in a consultant to help them untangle a mess either they inherited or have been dealing with for some time, where a board has leaned too far in. And I think of volunteer management as the art of understanding the balance between governance. It's the posture, I call it, the balance between governance and management. When a board leans too far in, they drive the staff nuts. When they lean too far back, they don't do anything and they get bored. And managing that proper middle line there. And I have 3 or 4 clients who are dealing with that right now, where a board has leaned too far in. Often membership of the leadership of the executive committee who've leaned too far in. They're driving the staff nuts, and they bring me in to be the bad guy. But what I see is the nice thing is I can go in and say to the board, to the staff, here's how it should be, and here's what you're doing right or wrong. And I get to go home at night. I don't have to worry about what the board will say to me afterwards. So it's over.
Yeah.
So I get put in front as the shield sometimes like that. But I've come to enjoy it, and it's good work. Interesting.
I remember when I first started my last job, the board was causing me so much anxiety that I started meditating
You told me
regularly.
that story. That's a good
Yeah,
story.
it was so challenging to deal with. And I actually just talked to someone last week, someone in the alumni leader role who was really going through the same things that you just described, which is
Yep.
really a tough dynamic with a
Yep.
board leaning too far in. So I think that's
Yep.
accurate. But this is the time of year. It's super busy. It's March Madness currently, but we're leading into the commencement run stretch. There's often big spring reunions planned as well. And it's budget planning time of year for the next academic year. What advice do you have for teams that are trying to tackle this stretch run?
Especially in the context of budget planning, I would say this is that it's 3 words: less is more. We do. You've heard me say this too many times on this show, Ryan. We do too much in our field. We spread ourselves so thin, and we have staff who are every day feeling the brunt of that and don't have a chance to focus. And so less is more. Focus on the things that are most important. They're going to have the most impact, and slow down the rest. And apply that to reunion planning. I'd say the same exact thing. Hard to do because a reunion is one of those things that's been done a certain way forever. And you have a core group of alumni, your loyal, most enthusiastic alumni, who are going to expect that when they come back to their next reunion. If you make any changes to it, it's hard. So, but wherever you can, focus on the most impactful things and trim out everything else.
We've seen that with a few partners as well, right? When they try to restructure some of those big tradition events, it really is, particularly with the older generation of alumni that, always sort of are against a lot of big changes. I think there's a contingent, and it's not all the older alumni, but it is often the case that the contingent that is most concerned with change and how to go about sort of refreshing these traditions and making them more of a sort of a modernization of these symbols and do it in a way that meets the needs of everybody. It's a challenging thing about our work, right?
Agreed, 100%.
All right, well, let's bring Dan Olds into the conversation. Dan is awesome. I've known Dan for years. I know you have too, and lots of folks that listen to the show. I've met Dan, I'm sure, at Case and elsewhere. Here he is. Hello, Dan Olds.
You're the man.
Great to be here. Thank you for
I hung this for you back here, man.
Thank you, Chris.
For those listeners who are listening to the podcast edition of Alumless, Chris is pointing to a pennant behind him with the words with Bowdoin on it. Chris has a thing where he updates the pennant behind him, contingent on who he is talking with at the time. It's a lovely trick. It's very school spirity.
I have a couple hundred pennants behind me on my other desk that I just switch out as I need to.
It's a good strategy. How long have you been doing that?
Since I started, it came at the very beginning. I was on a UCLA's campus, and I bought a pennant when I came home. Shout out to Julie Sina, and every time I've talked to Julie or her team, I've or a volunteer, I put UCLA behind me, and that started it. And I just kept it going, and now all of a sudden I have 200 college pennants in my office.
That's cool. Well, we're glad to have Dan on with us today.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here.
We're gonna. I'm titled Vice President of Alumni Relations and Information Systems, which is a new addition to your title over the last couple months. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the bonus section of the show today. But mainly, we're going to frame our conversation around volunteer management today. It's a big topic. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to volunteer management and building a pipeline of volunteers. But I guess to get us started on the topic, Dan, what are some of the crucial pieces that you think need to be in place in order to develop a comprehensive alumni volunteer engagement strategy?
Yeah, I think the first one is pretty obvious, but it's really important. Is what is the interest? If you're going to offer opportunities out to your community, you should have a sense of what people are interested in doing. Like, what will they find meaningful in their lives? And that can, take shape in a whole host of different ways. And once you kind of figure that out, you can have different channels of how alumni engage ultimately. And you can develop that over time. It's not a static thing. It's definitely a dynamic part of any alumni engagement program. And when you get it rolling, you have different options for people to enter that space. And when I say enter the space, I think it's important to remember in our work that they may enter it when they are 5 years out of that university or college experience. They may re-enter again after their 30th reunion. There's different entry points for people depending on what's happening in their lives and potentially their location. And I think being cognizant of that helps to think about strategically how you can engage the larger body of alumni in volunteer opportunities, and also think about new things as your alumni body changes over time. You always have the class years coming back in your various kind of reunion cycles, of course. But people's affinity changes over time, and from my experience, it typically gets stronger. And so recognizing that is really important in developing that piece of any alumni engagement strategy, and specifically around your volunteers.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too. And every university is different, right? Bowdoin is a great example of a school with strong class year affiliation. Most everyone goes and completes their degree in 4 years, right? My alma mater, University of Richmond. Chris, your alma mater, Lehigh University, all examples of schools with really robust class year specific volunteer opportunities and emphasis. But there are plenty of schools out there who have really struggled with that, because in fact, the majority of students don't graduate in those types of set 4-year piece, right? Is college. It's much more different, people coming and going, and so it's more challenging across the spectrum. But I think you're right on the money. Now that you've been in your role at Bowdoin for about 8 months, can you share a little bit about the things that you've been working on and what your approach has been, what you've learned so far about how alumni like to help out at Bowdoin?
Absolutely. I mean, as you just shared, Ryan, Bowdoin has a really, really strong and historic connection to involving volunteers and all of the programming that has taken place, even though it's changed over time in different ways. So, a big piece obviously is just, learning about those histories and histories of specific classes or initiatives that have gone on and have been sustained or have gone away, just understanding the dynamics that have been here and how people want to engage, stay connected to the institution, and, offer their time to support it. And so outside of that learning, I am in the middle of a strategic planning process with Chris Marshall. And so, we've had amazing discussions with alums, and, I truly feel very lucky to come into a new role. And part of my tasks in the first year is just to go through this process, because we're sitting alums down and asking them lots of questions about, you've been involved with Bowdoin for 5 or 50 years. And, what does this feel like to you now where we are, post-pandemic? Like, how have things changed for you? How have you seen your connection to your institution differently because of things that you've reflected on potentially during the pandemic, but definitely over the last 5 years? And I think that gives real direction to how we think about things. And I think that people in general that I've interacted with in the alumni community have done a lot of thinking about it, which is super cool. Like, they really have sat down and said, like, this aspect of my connection to the institution meant a lot to me, and I want to explore that or amplify it in my life. And so how can the institution support me in doing that, whatever that looks like? So a lot of the strategic planning discussions that we're having right now with the alums is about that. What can we expand or grow, building on the amazing foundation that's existed here for a long time and such a high engagement of our alumni over time at this institution.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. So for those that don't know Bowdoin College, and you should, give us a quick institutional profile and talk about your alumni engagement a little bit and your giving and other. I mean, it's some amazing data, your stats you have there.
Yeah, so, Bowdoin has always had a very engaged population. And when I say that, our aspiration is always to be around 50% or more of participation in the annual fund. It's gone above that and has stayed above that for various number of years. But it's amazing that you have an institution that has kept up that attention and giving back and paying it forward mentality over the amount of time this institution has existed. Another example of that, Chris, is, we're currently ending our campaign, which I'm coming in at the end of, but we have an 85% engagement goal. Over the course of the campaign, we want to, have a metric that 85% of our overall alumni population has connected with the institution in whatever way it made sense to them. And, we're almost there. I think we're probably around, mid 70s right now. We definitely were at 70% earlier this year for the period of the campaign. And so it's just been exciting to think about that. And because we have that idea as part of our campaign, we've been looking at the people that aren't as connected and how do we reach out to them and give them openings to be part of it. And for some, that could be multiple things. For some, it's a small way in. It could be a micro volunteering opportunity. It could be just coming to an event of a faculty member on campus and, listening to a conversation about a painting or a policy discussion. It could be a number of things that could, take the engagement for us.
We're talking about alumni population of about 30,000 people. Is that the ballpark?
Yeah, it's about 23,000.
Oh, smaller than that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, in total.
Okay. And how many staff do you have? Someone's going to ask how many staff do you have to do alumni engagement with 23,000 alumni? What's your staff number?
Yeah, we have 8 staff that work on that work, and that includes a director of multicultural alumni engagement that is focusing on lifting up and elevating emerging affinity groups that we have, which are really new in the last 18 months. Aspects of them have been around for a number of years before that, being an inclusive place and thinking about how to grow that. We have a more formal structure and discussions and outreach happening right now in the last 18 months around, getting more volunteer leadership and developing, roles to support that kind of conversation and support ways that those alums can connect back, especially with the students on campus.
Yeah, it's been great stuff. Sorry, Ryan, I jumped on you there.
No. It's great follow up. I love thinking about, you have I think a lot of people would envy your position, right? In terms of the loyalty and the engagement levels, but you also have a different challenge, which is, if they're not engaged already, why, right? It feels like you're doing so much right. I mean, it seems like it would be potentially harder to get those people who are unengaged involved because the culture of engagement is so strong, right? I don't know, just riffing here, but it feels like you might have a different challenge than other schools, right?
I would agree with that. To your point, I mean, people love their homecomings and reunions and those traditional foundational programs, and that exists here at Bowdoin. I mean, those are wonderful experiences for our alums. But not everyone can get back, of course, and not everyone can attend, if we do a regional event in their area all the time, life happens. So, we want to find ways that they can, one of the alums shared this term with me, they breathe in. How can they breathe into the institution and breathe out? And I like that concept because it actually transcends, being in a physical space. It transcends, even a Zoom call. It's something much bigger and greater than that. And so I always lean on that idea on, what can we do differently to help with that idea.
I like that. So Chris, you've been working with Dan. Of course, you work with other schools and lots of them. We talked about the 200 pennants behind you. But what are the key differences between alumni volunteer engagement programs that have all the pieces figured out versus those that have a lot of work to do?
Yeah, I would say that you look under the hood at any institution, no matter how big the staff or how small the alumni base or vice versa on that, and you look under the hood, there's going to be issues. And not everyone's got it figured out by far. Most people have some challenge in it. It's an area that I would say it's one of the front and center ones. You see that issue come up quickly. And there's a saying that nature abhors a vacuum, where volunteers will fill the gap if you don't have a program or a system or an answer to whatever the issue is that they're facing. And so that's the place where, frankly, when you have problems with a board or a council, a consultant comes in and says, let me help you with it. Because when someone, remember that posture we're talking about? When someone leans in too far or leans too far back, that's where the issues come, because there's either a vacuum or we filled it too much. We don't have enough for them to do. I have two sayings I like to share with clients. One, for the posture of the board, a good board should have their noses in, but their fingers out. And that's the line between governance and management. And that's talking about at a board of trustee level that applies, let alone an alumni board or alumni council. So noses in, fingers out. Even if you Google that term, you'll see all kinds of articles and writing about, how far in a board member should be leaning on what's happening at an institution or in an alumni program. And the other saying I have is this, and I say that to board members, the first one, good board, noses in, fingers out. Get out of the business of Dan's work and let him do his job managing the organization. You help govern or advise. The other saying is to the staff members or to the Dans of the world. I say to them, you get the board you deserve. And if you think about that long enough, if you're there 8 months and you have a great alumni council, by the way. So let's just start right at the gate. And you have that because it's been that way and it was managed properly by your predecessors. But when anybody has a board that's driving them nuts, it's because you haven't managed it properly and you deserve it. If you work at it, and anytime I find a good board, it's because the leader, the Dan position, and often other members of the team have worked really hard at it. And when board meetings come up, it's more of a joyous thing than, oh my God, the board's coming this weekend thing. When that happens, guess what? You get the board you deserve because you've worked at it and you can enjoy the relationship with those volunteers. So keep the vacuum, don't have a vacuum is what the takeaway is on that one.
Yeah, I remember, the dread that I had when I initially started with the board. 6 years later, it was like, breathing easy and, looking forward to it and feeling positive about the camaraderie that the board members had together when they were visiting. But Dan, I thought, to add to the conversation about your alumni council, talk just a little bit more about the goals you have for that crucial, super engaged group of alumni. But then also when you can follow that up with volunteer engagement strategy is more than boards, right? It is more than whether it's a regional board or an alumni board or whatever it is. We need to have other ways that's not about being on a board for alumni to participate. And that's the way that we really scale volunteer opportunities, right? Because there's only so many positions, right?
Yeah.
On any given board, right? So how do you get the masses involved as volunteers? Would love to hear your thoughts on both of those pieces.
Yeah. So related to the alumni council, I mean, Chris just pointed out the fact that I say to myself every day, we have a really, really great alumni council board, and the council really kind of leans in to supporting the students. I would say that's a top priority for them. Always thinking, like how can we as a group, first and foremost, when we're on campus, when we're thinking about things, how can we support those students and work with campus partners and with alumni relations to do that work, and then how do we teach people on the council to expand their understanding of their role. And I can give you an example. Next week, we have our meeting with the Alumni Council, and we're kicking it off with an hour-and-a-half training on ways to think about intersectionality in the world today. And that's going to be led by several staff members and also facilitated by our Alumni Council president, who was previously head of our DEIA committee on the council. So, and all council members are involved with that. It's just going to be a discussion and learning to kick off the weekend together. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And I think people will come away with some deeper understanding in that space. And then I would say later that day, just to give you another example, we're doing a joint event with our career development office here and inviting students in to speak with alumni council members and other volunteers, including our fund directors and some admissions volunteers, about what they're looking for in their career ahead, or what's the next step even for them if they're going to graduate school. Just basically a in-person mentoring / career guidance activity that it's not a heavy lift for them. We're going to come up and make it very easy, and we're going to sit down together and just, again, spending time face to face. And as they come back to campus, it's a really good use of their time. And they come away with that as an alum having a meaningful connection to what's happening now on campus. And obviously the students that join those kind of activities really see the path forward and understand there are volunteers that were students that are coming back to support them and help them and listen to them. The listening piece is really critical. So I've enjoyed those kind of activities, and we're going to continue to think about those and expand them or sustain those that we're doing right now in different ways.
Yeah, that's great.
So your second question was around thinking about strategies for letting volunteers in, micro volunteering, however you would define that. And I would say just one of the first things I noticed of working in this role at Bowdoin is they do a really, really good job. The staff and our alumni council members and other volunteers that we have in our community help out when we're doing events in various spaces. And I have been able to attend at least 6 so far off campus, away in different areas of the U.S. And part of that, we set up host committees, and we really try to engage that group in why we're doing this, the purpose. And our number one purpose for bringing people together on the staff side is to recognize volunteers in the room. We want that group to come together. We want them to have a good experience and connect and have that social time with one another. But a key piece of it is also having this host committee, also reach out to their networks where they're living, invite people there, come hang out, come spend time with the Bowdoin community. And during the event, we make a point to recognize them, because I think it's very easy to have people involved in those things and not have them pointed out and recognized and celebrated with their peers, because they should be celebrated. They're giving up their time to the institution to support this kind of activity. And ultimately what that led to, in an example of in 2 of the cities I was just in, Chicago and Denver, I had several people in the crowd speak to those volunteers, and immediately they're like, how do I get involved with this? Where do I go to find out more? It really was effective in translating what our volunteers are doing, and above and beyond the digital space. Yes, you can go to a website, you can reach out, you can do all of those things, but that in-person connectivity, I think, is more valuable than ever as people come away from what they were doing during the pandemic and in the world we live in now, where from my experience, I'm meeting lots of alums that live in cities, but actually don't work for companies in those cities. Those alums may work in, hubs like New York, in Los Angeles, and San Francisco, but they may live in Denver, in Maine, or Massachusetts. So the idea of what their community has become is become very different. And so the value of that connection and understanding while we're together and recognizing the volunteers has become tantamount. And I just really appreciated seeing it take shape this year.
Chris, I wanted to tee you up to sort of chat a little bit about what you've noticed about working with Dan and the team at Bowdoin and their volunteer strategy. Dan just shared a lot of great insights into what they're doing and how he's thinking about it.
I know we're bumping up against our first half hour timer, so I'll tell you 2 quick things. One, the work that Jocelyn doing, your colleague Dan, on the Identity Affinity Group has been a game changer for Bowdoin. It's a Northeast liberal arts institution that was all male for a big part of its history, and diversity has increased over time, but in recent years it's gone off the charts. So you have a younger recent alumni base that is much more diverse than a traditional base. And the work that Jocelyn's done, it started previously, but Jocelyn came in and just shouted off the charts. It's been amazing to see. And the volunteers that are stepping up to support those identity groups is just unbelievable. I've loved watching everything she's done there. And the second one isn't really a Dan thing, not even your predecessor, Dan. One of the things I've been most impressed with at Bowdoin is the boot camp work, which really comes out of the career office there. What do you guys call it at Bowdoin? It's called
the sophomore boot camp.
The office that does career services at Bowdoin is called career exploration. Something.
We call it CXD. Yeah, career exploration. But the definition is CXD for all the students. So that's
got it. Yeah, but it's an event that happens right after winter break of the sophomore year. It started off as a volunteer activity, and now all sophomores come back for a week-long immersion in life after Bowdoin. What does it mean for me? And they bring alumni in to talk about grad school, career, pathways and journeys. And Dan's team now provides a lot of support in helping get the alumni there, obviously. But it's just go Google Bowdoin Boot Camp and read about it. And if you're listening to this, you will be glad you did. It's an amazing example.
Yeah,
I remember hearing.
I was going to say that boot camp, that brings around 20, 22 alums on campus, but over 400. I think that number was 417 participate digitally with students during that period of time.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah,
really cool. I love it. Well, we're bumping up against our first half hour, Chris. As you pointed out, we love to tease our next Alumless guest, and we have a special episode coming up. Not to say that Dan is not special, and all of our episodes have been special, of course, but this one is special because.
Well, it's our 1 year anniversary of Alumless.
Hard to believe.
What episode number are we on? Because we skipped a few around holidays, so it's like 20.
Yeah, we're at 20. This is our 22nd episode here.
22nd episode. Yeah. So we didn't get every other week like we would in the full year. But so it's our 1 year anniversary, and to celebrate that, I've asked a very special guest to join us. She is a volunteer leader, actually. So she's on the other side of not on the staff. It's our first non-staff member joining us. And she happens to be a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. And she's the chair of the volunteer organization called USOPA, United States Olympic and Paralympic Association. So we're going to have a really special conversation with a very unique group of alumni. Those that were Olympians and Paralympians are a client of mine. I've been working with them on building out a new strategy for their overall operation. And Karin Davies. She's a Harvard and Columbia grad, a rower, a 3-time Olympian, and 2-time Olympic gold medalist. So a pretty cool guest coming up.
Yeah, I love how we're going to try to connect alumni-ness with, a membership of an association, right? A different type of organization from a college or university altogether. And I think there's an opportunity to explore alumni-ness across different sectors, right?
Yeah,
and
cool.
It's a really interesting project you've been working on. All right, well, thank you for joining us, and we are going to find a quiet Zoom room and record our second half hour with Dan Olds to publish on the podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Karin, and have a great weekend, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you, Dan. Great job.
Thank you, everyone.